Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another Word of God interview. Today we're with Olga Stein, who you may think is a newly published poet with her new book, which is true. But she also has an enormous 30-year background in Canadian literature, starting I think, with books in Canada and going on to a number of other issues. And I'd like to cover some of that because every Canadian writer has more to them than we realize. There's many things that can be done that do not elevate your name particularly. And, hundreds of us go on at this game without ever winning a prize and without ever getting our names in the newspapers. But that doesn't mean that we're not doing something valuable and creative. We are. And Olga's a perfect example of that. And I'd like to begin with asking her about her childhood in Moscow, because I understand she was there for a few years before the family escaped.
So I left Moscow at 6. I didn't have a long, protracted childhood there. But it's interesting that you ask because, definitely the foundation, the interest in Russian language music and poetry was laid during, even those first 6 years. And it's, that interest, that sort of that abiding interest in Russian poetry and aspects of Russian culture are definitely still with me and still inspire me. And in fact, I've just started a book-length project, very very challenging, as I'm finding out, which is a kind of I'm hoping will become a book-length poetry collection, which is autobiographical. And it begins with my childhood in Moscow.
Right. And it will be thought of and conceived of and written in English, right?
Yes, completely.
Right. Just curious about that.
No.
Because I was asking because Eva Kollaks has a new book of poetry in English that she translated from her young womanhood, written in Polish. And I just thought, I wonder if Olga would ever attempt.
I am very envious of people who know their native or mother tongue, that well. No, I sort of I know Russian passively.
Yes.
I read it, and I have a good understanding. It's not a perfect understanding, and I can speak. Not in a polished way, but I mean, to write is something entirely different. That's an active use of the language, and
of course,
it would be very difficult because primarily my language is English, and I use it, make very good use of it. I would feel like my hands were tied behind my back if I was trying to write in Russian. So, but kudos to all of those who can translate, between two languages like that. I think that's fabulous, and and I'm deeply envious.
Me too. It's too late to get started on that. It's I've studied a lot of mystical texts in my 50 years of adulthood, and every once in a while somebody will say, well, Gord, have you studied the Kabbalah? And I go, well, yeah, I've had a look at it, but it's huge. I said, it's got an enormous history. Many people have contributed to it. And if you want to do any more than dip your toes in it, which is what I have done, you might as well give up everything else in your life because there's no time.
Yes.
So,
yes. And by the way, even your assumption that I know a great deal about Canadian literature, would be, I think it's inaccurate because because, when I edited Books in Canada,
Right.
I managed to collect a lot of books, and I have this vast library, and I can only, occasionally dip my toe,
Of course,
here and
yes.
there. I have just wonderful books. I mean, CanLit is just so rich.
Oh,
But there
yes.
is just no time, right?
Yes.
To read everything.
There is not.
Because I think that if you read or tried to read everything you wanted to, you would never write.
It's true. It's
Right.
true. I did a fair bit of that in my 30s, studying the modern canon,
Right.
American, Brit, Canadian, and I got to Canada and I thought, well, I got to read Margaret Lawrence, and I got to read this, and I got to read Alice
Right.
Munro, and I read all this stuff. And you don't read it all, but you read enough,
Right.
and you try to realize that modern Canadian poetry didn't actually owe that much to Dylan Thomas or T.S. Eliot or Virginia Woolf. It was coming from another, I'm talking in the 1970s. So it took me a while to get adapted to that, but eventually I got to, harmonize my background with what was going on. And obviously many years go by, years in which I'm studying everything I can get my hands on, and I would go to the local library and there'd be this little free magazine called Books in Canada, which of course I'd pick it up and read through it. And I
Right.
got a fair bit of knowledge. This is long before you
Before
were
I
editing
came
it.
aboard, right.
Yeah.
Well, it was a 36-year-old publication. I
Right.
think even.
So I just wanted to tell people that you used to, it was sitting there and you could read all these reviews of mostly Canadian books
Yes.
in this free journal. So it was a great contribution to my education in Canadian literature. I'd also be having a look at the London Review of Books or the New York Review of Books and, whatnot. And
I miss those days, when you,
exactly, me too.
these were beautifully fashioned
They are.
literary magazines, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Books in Canada, no less. I would say that, before I got involved with it, I mean, I've had a look, and we had collections of the old issues, and I would just, they were just, marvelous. They were just so rich in terms of what they offered. It's really sad, that we've seen in the last 2 decades a demise, of small
In print
magazines.
culture, yes.
Yeah. Yep.
So when you look back at your time as a Books in Canada editor, aside from the overwhelming workload for a mother raising a family, what else do you think of?
It was a period of great discovery. That was not, literature was really not my background, although I went to U of T. In part, I went on a scholarship, and it was in part for how well I did in my English classes in high school. But I didn't focus on literature. I did English as a minor. I did languages as a minor, but my degrees were in philosophy and political science, and then my master's degree was in political theory and political economy, which in some ways was fabulous for when, it was very important ground for when I took over Books in Canada, because I was able to deal with books that were not on literature.
Yes, yes, yes.
But when I started reviewing myself, it was both challenging but also incredibly rewarding, because I got to know slowly. I mean, I did this for 8 years, right? I got to know Canadian literature, I'm very grateful for the period. It was a very, in some ways extremely difficult in every regard, but the work itself was wonderful. And if I had the capital, to continue doing it, I would have continued. Exactly. But eventually I stopped because I just couldn't deal with the shortage of money. It wasn't the work. The work was amazing. But the shortage of money was just, it was damaging on every level, right?
Well, we can look back at the history of literary magazines, US, UK. They struggle to survive.
Yes.
And some pull it off, but not for very long. A lot of them, I noticed in a little essay I wrote, Exile is hitting its 50th anniversary.
Amazing.
So amazing.
Yeah.
Congratulations,
and kudos,
Exiles and Mr. Cameron. Sorry, Callahan, sorry. That's a hell of an achievement to pull that off. 50 years.
Survivor.
If only we all could be that way.
Exactly.
And obviously we've moved into digital culture now. You and I, we joined up with Darcy to help out with Word City for a few years.
Yes.
And that was a fun project while it lasted, but I think Darcy just got exhausted.
Yeah, I think that magazine did its job. Darcy started it during COVID, during the first year of COVID.
Yes.
And it's one of the reasons I jumped aboard, because again, I felt the call to contribute to, the community. I mean, I had just finished my PhD. And right around that time, sort of, she started looking for editors or contributors, and I just jumped aboard. And she's a marvelous person. She's generous, she's kind. I mean, not everybody, I didn't have this kind of nose up and looking down on me, She was, and she's a wonderful writer, by the way, a fiction writer.
We've read her book of short stories.
Oh,
Cynthia's liked it so much she read it 3 times.
Wow. Well, there you go, Darcy.
I kid you not.
Yeah. No, Darcy deserves a readership, no doubt. And she's just a lovely and generous person. But anyway, that's, the project itself, the magazine, the online magazine, was also it did something very different, and I wrote about this. I wrote an essay about Word City and its, its origins, because the editorial board consisted of only women.
Yes.
And it consisted of editors from all over the world.
Right. I remember that.
Right.
Yes.
Which is, from the African community as well. And that was the first time, you suddenly realize that we're not actually, separated by, this vast distance, which we imagine, could not be broached, that, our cultures were just separate because of, just we were at different ends of the earth, right? So, and, suddenly you're communicating on a daily basis, and you're, you're collaborating. And that was, an amazing and eye-opening experience. And from there on, I realized that, we can build networks.
For sure.
And that was not the only network that I built. I also built, I acquainted myself with Russian writers, Russian Jewish writers, Russian writers still in Russia, Ukrainian writers still in Ukraine, et cetera, et cetera. So, the whole, the internet is that it offers this wonderful opportunity.
Oh, it does. There's no question. Absolutely.
There's a lot that's wrong with the online universe and the kinds of things that allows people to do, but that aspect of it is absolutely enriching.
Oh, it is. I totally agree. I enjoyed participating in that experiment. I had great fun, and
I brought you aboard, right?
Oh, you certainly did. You emailed me, and I was already writing for a New Age publication. Again, online, yada yada yada. And suddenly, with the lockdown, I'm contributing to
Word City,
and I found that whereas in years past I would sometimes apologize for reading so many books by women authors, but I had a totally free, and I found particularly, if you go through my old reviews, I'm going to publish them at some point. Memoirs written by women are fascinating. And there's lots of them. Now, you can get to the top and, okay, well, she's a film star, who cares? You can go down to other levels in terms of celebrity. But I know from hanging out at the local library, there are lots of good memoirs. And they cover ground that kind of, novels don't really get to. I don't think. And I can give you many examples, but it doesn't really matter. But that was what I learned there. I always liked reading memoirs, but I got to really splurge. And there's whole sections of my Word City contributions are about memoirs written by women.
I recall that.
Loads of them.
It's wonderful to hear you say that because...
Oh, they were fascinating. Well, also, the male writers too. But the one by, I've forgotten his name, but he remembered going to India on the hippie trail in the 20s. And fortunately, he kept all his notes. So his he went with
I think I recall that. because
I
edited it.
Oh, did you? Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, I edited your pieces, yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
so that was what I learned. Obviously, you read poetry, novels, yada, yada, yada.
Yes.
But I found this growing pile, if you want to call it that, of memoirs. And they're very popular. They do get published, and it doesn't have to be, about some film star having a spiritual crisis. There's a lot more going on than that, and
in women's lives.
And because Darcy was able, Darcy never said, "Oh, don't review that."
No, she was
very open.
Yeah.
So as months went on, I got to see, oh man, these memoirs are so revealing of culture and people's experience of culture. And culture in the broadest sense. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So that was one of the things I learned. But also with Word City, I didn't know you were such a good essayist. You really developed your essay abilities then, and I was quite struck by your command of rhetoric and your ability to be passionate about what you believed in.
Well, I am passionate about what I believe in. My training, my academic training was in writing essays. So first and foremost, when I started university, and I actually wrote about this in a little piece for books for Word City, because we were asked to kind of write a little short thing on what motivates us as a writer. And I said, when I went to university, I had to put my more creative writing interest aside because I felt they were impractical. I mean, and I'll say this very quickly. My parents and I were immigrants. Yeah. My parents came here with $200 in 1975. Yes. And there was just no money. And there was no money for many things, including clothing, so even when I got to university, before I got to university, my parents were, pushing very practical careers on me, or they tried to push them. So, I studied political science and philosophy thinking that was actually, one of the more practical things I could do because maybe I could become just a bureaucrat at some point.
You could do that.
For the civil service, well, why not, right? Instead, I ended up getting married very young. But anyway, that's a whole other story. So my training was in writing essays and of course arguing in a very tight fashion because how do you write about political science or in the context of a political science degree and a philosophy degree without acquiring all those skills to make arguments, right? Yes. And I still try to be always creative in my arguments, but the arguments, the logic had to always be there, right? It had to be, and very clear, and easily followed. Yes. But so that was my intellectual training. I always try to write beautifully still, so it's not like the poetry is, from just entirely from left field. No, I've always been very conscious of the language I used. I've always, wrote with a kind of rhythm, and thought about every word that I put in. I taught myself English. That's another thing that people don't realize, because when you're in university and your parents are immigrants, you can't go to them and say, is this a nicely written paragraph? Does it make sense to you? No, you struggle with it on your own.
Yes.
But anyway, so, writing more personal essays or more sort of, essays that deal with issues and culture, it wasn't, it wasn't like a huge jump for me. And also don't forget, I had just come off a PhD.
Right. Right. Yes.
Where I also had to kind of, pardon me, I had to bring things slightly under tighter control. I remember one of my dissertation committee members telling me in one of the earlier phases of the dissertation, this is great writing, but it's too journalistic. Well, first of all, I don't think it's so bad to write well when you're writing a dissertation. But yeah, sure. I mean, point taken, right? I mean, there is a scholarly style, and you have to make sure that you always meet those criteria or certain criteria, that make scholarly writing. It can still be good writing.
Oh, yes, it can. Yes.
I mean, there are people who are masters of it,
I notice a lot of scholarly books are, in many subjects, are adapted from somebody's studies, where the editors have obviously said, rewrite this and make it a bit more commercial. And they do. And I see a lot of that in any field. It does, politics, sociology, studies of this, that, and the other, things leaning into science. I notice that a lot. And I gobble up a lot of those texts myself, especially if they come into the library and I can just grab them. But no, seriously, I do. And I think it's a great development. Are you familiar with the journal History Today?
Yes.
I am, because it comes into the library. I read it a lot. And it's all written by historians, but they popularized the topic so that in 3 or 4 pages you can get a gist of this historical episode that they're talking about.
Right.
And feel like, well, I finally know something about that.
So this is what, this is what you now call in academe public-facing writing.
Oh, okay.
So it's interesting. When I started my PhD, there was very little talk about the internet and, the sort of writing that you could, that you could do, for online publications. But because I was in the graduate program for so long, things really changed. And in fact, my dissertation was in part on the way literary prizes changed because of the internet. And the way, literary prestige also changed, and how, what it really was in the age of the internet. But anyway, so public-facing, popularized, serious content, but that could be read by non-scholarly readers.
Yes, exactly. Because I think the publishers realized there's a huge swath of university, college-educated people that are busy at their careers, but they still, as well as entertaining fiction, they still want to read stuff in any number of fields, whether it be quantum physics or the history of colonialism or whatever, that will educate them a bit.
Yes.
And it's true, there is a huge number of educated people who can't possibly make any money in their field, and so they get a job that pays the bills, and they're still very, very interested in whatever they studied before, and they want to keep up with what's going on.
Yes. I have to say that in my own essays, I don't know if you noticed, Gord, but I kind of, my own essays are my own hybrid way of combining, scholarship. Because so it's, I mean, they're referenced, right? I reference facts and other people's writing and and data, so on and so forth, and I cite it, but it's just it's there in a language that's meant to appeal to non-academic writers, or people who want to enjoy also language as well as as argument, right? Because I think the aesthetic dimension always is like the sugar that makes the medicine go down, right?
I like that. That's good. Your recent essay on the two Edith Wharton and the other 19th century novelists.
Yes.
That was a good example of that.
Thank you.
And I would have more intelligent things to say if I'd actually read the Edith Wharton novel and not the movies that they were based on.
Right, which was one, and the movie was lovely.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was as good
as... The Age
of
Innocence certainly affected me.
That's right.
Absolutely affected me.
So, yeah.
And you could see the characters, as you say, caught in their social strata.
Yes.
Struggling to get out, and they couldn't.
Yes. No, that's right. And I think that's very much what The Age of Innocence is about.
Unfortunately, the other novelist I know of, but I hadn't read their work.
Yes, so the other novel I covered was The Song of the Lark, right?
Yes. Sounded very interesting.
Yeah, and it's a kind of mainstay of modern American fiction.
Yes.
And it's about, I mean, it really is. It covers many subjects, music, but also immigration.
Yes.
And the movement, across America. And,
yes.
So I think it's something that Canadian fiction does not, generally speaking, deal with. Is the movement within, the same country. Back and forth. And Americans even now they have this tendency, to pick up and go,
Oh, I've noticed
from
it
New
all
York
along.
to California,
Yes,
somewhere else. They do this, they do it for their careers, and but I just don't think we do this, and I regret this myself personally because I've lived in Ontario and Toronto ever since I arrived here, right?
Oh, me too, yes.
And it's like one of my big regrets is not having moved more,
I see.
within Canada, or or moved out of Canada or back to Canada, whatever, So,
Americans have this amazing ability to pack their bags and move on.
Yes.
I've noticed that even amongst the friends of mine, email buddies or whatever, and it's like they've got this huge country to sort of play around in.
Exactly.
And if you don't like Arizona, well, there's always Oregon.
Yes. Why don't we do that here?
Well, in my early days, a lot of my high school and college friends went to British Columbia.
Yes, I was
just thinking. That was a trendy thing to do.
Yes.
And some of them, they did. Some stayed forever, raised their families, and others came back.
Yes.
But that was considered a very, important thing for Ontario young people to do, was go to British Columbia. Maybe, I don't know, to get away from the winter. I'm not quite sure what it was.
That would be one consideration.
Yeah.
But I think actually the culture there is very different.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It is, yes.
Yeah, I remember from conversations with Brian Fawcett.
Right.
He would tell me about British Columbia. And he would say that one of the reasons he left British Columbia, Vancouver, was because people sort of, especially young people from families with money, they just wouldn't end up doing anything, which is, a problem with the youth of California too.
Yes,
right?
yes.
There's just, life is so pleasant on the beach, it's
Right.
hard to
Why
get
bother?
off your ass.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Brian Fawcett. I do feel some of his work has been praised in the day, but like Cambodia, a book for people who think TV is too slow with its double text on every page, they're very bravely experimental texts.
And clear cut, right?
Oh, clear cut. Right. I heard about that, but I didn't read it yet. I can find a copy. But he was
an amazing. I have to jump
a powerful
in here.
writer.
A powerful writer, a beautiful human being.
Oh, really? Yes.
More. He was a little sometimes prickly on, at first, but I mean, I just found him to be wonderful in every respect, as an intellect, as a friend, warm friend,
Yes, yes.
And I miss him dearly. I mean,
Yes, he did die quite young, did he not?
No, I wouldn't say he was that young, but he was certainly not
60s?
old. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, he should have stuck around a lot longer.
I was sorry not to make his acquaintance because he seemed like a really feisty character that you could have a very sort of lively debate with on almost anything.
100%.
And I noticed a few things popped up in the letters column of Books in Canada where he'd be debating something with somebody that disagreed with him. And I thought, I want to get onto that guy and debate with him, And I did see him in Dooney's a couple of times in the Annex, but he was having lunch with George Bowering and I didn't dare disturb them.
Wow. Yes.
So I let them be. And that was as close as I got, seeing him in Dooney's a couple of times.
No.
But he was quite a character, and I think quite a few people will miss him.
Oh, I think anyone who knew him, would miss him dearly. And, just not to forget, I mean, this was one of those wonderful gifts that I got out of Books in Canada, is getting to know people like Stan Persky, like Brian. And I just want to say about Brian that he made a huge contribution to Canadian literature.
Yes.
And one shouldn't forget it.
Yes.
And even towards sort of the last couple of years of Books in Canada, he was reviewing all the time. And, and he was reviewing cookbooks and he loved to cook, right? But it was...
That's the mark of a real professional writer. Can you review cookbooks?
He was a foodie also. He was a foodie. Yeah. Anyway... He wanted to to right?
Yes,
and every review is a contribution. I mean, it really is because it still takes time. I mean,
oh, absolutely, it does. I remember my partner of the time, because you got me onto Simon Schama, and said to me after some months, "Are you still working on that Schama piece?" Because I was only reviewing one book, but then I went to the library, I went to Metro Reference and found all this other stuff.
Yes,
and you're going to read his book on French Revolution. That's 800 pages.
A master historian.
Oh, he's great.
Yeah.
And but that's what slowed me up. And you never once said, "Gordy, you finished that essay yet?"
Well,
which was very kind of you.
I think I was too busy. The thing about publishing a magazine is that you're actually working on three issues at once.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So the first one is the one that's going out, is due at the printers.
Yes.
And then you're also working on the one that has to come after. So, you're editing already pieces that, that are coming in very slowly. And then also you're working on the one that's going to come after because... Precisely because, you cannot assume that a review is going to come in 2 weeks or even a month, So you got to really plan ahead. So I was probably just...
too busy to complain.
Too busy.
Yeah. For some reason, that sticks in my mind as the one that took so long. And I was reviewing his book on the evolution of Britain as a political entity, which was great, very entertaining. And as all his books are, I would like to say that they're very entertaining, as well as informative.
There you go, public-facing history, yet also scholarly.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
And he would get criticized by the more academic side of history.
And who weren't being read in the same way.
Yes. And they were annoyed that he was doing these BBC documentaries. And but all very, how to be informed, intelligent, and entertaining all at the same time.
Yes,
very
not
admirable.
Easy. No, exactly.
So we're so lucky to live in a world where that is possible. And if you want to go beyond the slightly superficial, entertaining treatment of a subject, there's always more that you can delve into.
Yes, absolutely.
Always more.
Yeah.
And that's what I have found in my own journey.
Yeah. I find that anytime I sit down to write anything, because my process is very laborious. I always feel like I don't know enough, right?
Well, that's true.
So I research, like to the very kind of margins of what I might need, to write anything, an essay, a review. And then, but of course, it's also that's very rewarding, right, as well, because you learn so much. Or you reacquaint yourself with material that you've forgotten, or you read differently when you read it the first time, right? So...
I remember David McFadden once said to me, amongst many interesting things that David McFadden said to me, he said, when George Bowring wants to know about something, he writes a book about it. And I thought, well, that's pretty revelatory. I'll keep that in mind.
Right.
And again, if you want to talk about Simon Schama, George Bowring's 3 books on various aspects of Canadian history are wildly entertaining. They are such great reads. And I don't think the historians liked them very much. But they were very, like, he didn't stand on any kind of ceremony. He didn't have any false praise for previous prime ministers that were corrupt. I mean, we're going back to hundreds of years.
Right.
And great fun to read. Very good.
I think it's a good reminder that we should revisit these books because,
Oh, I'd love to.
Yeah. I mean, and not just us, I mean, young people, because we're forgetting Canadian history. We're rewriting it, and we're rewriting it in all the wrong ways.
I guess, we see young people living in the moment on their digital equipment, whatever the moment happens to be, whether it's music or scandal or politics or what the girls down the street are doing. But there has to be some that are going to develop into serious scholars of one thing or another. Just like in or I'll say my generation, high school, college in the early 70s, there was lots of people that were very keen on getting into one thing or another.
Yes.
And
academe actually demanded that you kind of specialize. It's one of the biggest complaints that they might have against me. Just that I'm so interdisciplinary, right?
Yes.
I can't keep my nose out of
that's great. I love
adjacent fields.
Well, when you say interdisciplinary, I find the same patterns of behavior, and I don't just mean behavior, psychological behavior, but patterns of behavior in creativity repeat across the genres. I see it very compellingly over and over.
Yes.
And not to say, I guess we've got something, we would experience the evolution of feminism and all the new territory that it opened up for us, you and myself, in that same time period. And now, when I look at the memoirs of people, transgender people, I see that as a whole. I know a little bit about it, but not much. And that's a whole new area that I think younger writers are getting very fascinated with. I see memoirs all the time. I picked up one at the library the other day, written by a Scottish psychologist.
Really? Who's transgender?
Yes. I'm afraid I haven't the time to read it, but it's sitting over there, and I will try to.
That's very interesting.
Read it and review it. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's a whole new field opening up because nobody really wanted to write about it. Nobody wanted to speak about it.
Right.
20 years ago. And we certainly don't want to accommodate it. One of the fields that I teach, or one of the courses that I teach, is in the area of the sociology of sport. And, we discussed the problem with trans athletes. And, the fact, and I don't believe that trans athletes in a lot of sports should be allowed to compete against cisgendered women. But I think that there should be new categories opened up for them. And I think just like there is, with Special Olympics, you've got, you've got so many different categories for every different ability, for every different sport. And why aren't we doing this with trans athletes? And I can tell you why. It's because the Olympics is still very old-fashioned. It's very conservative, and they don't want to talk about trans athletes. They really just don't want to deal with that whole topic, which is so unfortunate. Because they have to. It's here to stay, and you have to accommodate these athletes, So, I mean, that's, there are solutions. Yeah, people just didn't want to. They don't want to look at still.
Does it take a new generation of bureaucrats to change things?
Yeah.
Yes.
Could be. Well, in the last Olympics they introduced male-female races, right, for various sports. So you had mixed teams for the first time, and the athletes, the participants, love them. So like. In swimming, athletes, members of a team would have to swim like 50, meters each or 100 meters each or do a particular stroke. And it became very strategic, right? They would have two men and two women on the team. And, it was strategy. And then it was, it was, a real sort of collaborative effort,
Nice.
And the participants, as I said, they loved it.
Good. And you probably followed it quite closely, didn't you?
I did.
I thought you would,
I was teaching about it, and and things. But the thing is, things change, right? I mean, what wouldn't be considered, possible in sports 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Never mind going back further, right?
Right.
From the beginning of the Olympics, the idea that there would be 50-50 participation,
Yes,
men and women. Nobody could imagine. Now, that's not how the Olympics were conceived, the modern Olympics. They were conceived as being for men.
Exactly. The old patriarchy.
And for gentlemen, and not even, not everybody, just, the gentlemen.
Exactly. I haven't forgotten that.
Those who didn't need to work for a living. Anyway.
Exactly. Right. Well, we've reached about the 40-minute mark. So what I'm going to propose is we'll pause this, upload it, and then get on to part 2 where we can get into your poetry.
Sure.
Yes?
With pleasure. Yes.
Okay, friends, we'll be back fairly soon. Give us about half an hour. Of course, if you're watching this next week, it won't matter at all.